Once willing to defund the police, Oakland, California now faces a major violent crime spike. Who would have thought? Would that have been a reasonable thing? If you defund the police and just kind of let anarchy go on, then what could really go wrong? I don't see anything wrong with. I'm sure it'll be fine. The rest of us are like, what are you doing? That's not reasonable. That's ridiculous. If you were gonna defund the police and put money into something else that we know equally or greater than does the whole law enforcement thing, then okay, let's talk about it. But we didn't do that. We were just like, defund the police, greatest concept ever. Until it wasn't. And it still isn't. And so now Oakland is probably the most dangerous city in all of California, ranking out of a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being the safest. Oakland is a 1, not 100, a 1. 1. You've got a 1 in 77 chance of being a victim of a violent crime in Oakland. Not good odds. That is simply not reasonable. It's what we're talking about today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies here in Seattle, Washington, and I read news that reasonable people find reasonable because it's reasonable. It's like, what are we doing here? So much of what we see around us, I look at and go, that is ridiculous, not reasonable. And I think you do too. It doesn't matter what political spectrum you fall on. It doesn't matter what you believe in, God, no God. You're just looking at all this stuff going, that is ridiculous. How did we get here? Is it because we got the media covering all this stuff now? Oh, a little bit. You got guys like me pointing it out? Yeah, but you're looking at stuff and so am I. And maybe you're moving away from areas that have this. Or maybe you're being forced by a job to move to areas that have this stuff. And you're like, that's not all that reasonable, but I'm getting paid 30% more than I was at the last job. So how bad could Portland be? You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to hammer on Portland, but man, it has opened itself up to being hammered on just by political leadership. And I feel bad for all the folks that have been there a long time because it is a beautiful city. Rose City, it's a beautiful city. It's just got some blemishes right now that it needs to work its way out of. And it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. This is going to take a while. This whole crime spike, it's happening across the United States. But in cities that defunded the police and went down that road, it seems like we've got just a little bit more spiky spike in the crimes, doesn't it? It feels that way. Man, if you watch the news here in Seattle, we are on a run. So I've been covering that, but now that we're news for reasonable people, I'm going to go a little further out. I'm going to venture a little further out and see what's out there in the great wide world. I've covered stuff in California quite a bit on the real estate end of things, but as far as kind of the topics that you guys want to hear, I haven't done as much because it's hard to spin why a real estate podcast from Seattle is covering crime wave in Oakland. That's a hard spin. Now, you guys did love the violent biker gang confronts Antifa and Antifa runs to the cops when things don't work out. That video, man, you guys, along with another 175,000, I don't know, 215,000 people have watched that video. So people love their Antifa. They love their violent biker gangs, and they love it when Antifa gets, put down and they go whining, where's the cops? Where's 911? We need help. I mean, that was literally the story, right? I think half the people didn't even really watch it. They were just like, oh, that is a really good thumbnail and a really good topic. We're going to like that. So that was kind of last week, maybe the week before, a big video that came out. Somehow I've gone from real estate to biker gangs and Antifa. You know what? We're reasonable. We're just going to go with it. We're not going to question it. We're just, Yep. So if you've got violent biker gang topics and or Antifa stories that come out, let me know because I'll cover them. There hasn't been a ton on either one. And to be honest, I'm probably not going to cover biker gangs. That was more of a one-off-ish because it had to do with Antifa, right? And who doesn't love to poop on Antifa? Yeah, that's what we do here. We're reasonable. They're not. That's what we do. All right, let's jump into this one. Where is my news story with Oakland? There it is. All right. And I think you'll really enjoy a comment that the mayor of Oakland makes. It's like, okay, yeah, well, I saw that one coming from halfway around the world. Oakland is often touted as the bright side of the bay because of its sunny skies and moderate year-round temperatures, but a rise in violent crime has cast a dark shadow on the 430,000 people who call Oakland home. A dark shadow. There's a foreboding dark shadow coming. We're under it. Oh, your chance of being a victim of violent crime in Oakland, California is 1 in 77. If you think, those aren't bad odds, I'll take those odds. If you're dealing with your life, you probably don't roll the dice on that. Simply not reasonable. That's not a reasonable dice roll. We're not going to do that. Nearly 3 times higher than the state of California at large, according to a statistical analysis of FBI crime data by neighborhoodscout.com. The violent crime rate in Oakland is one of the highest in the nation. The site's data comparison with other cities found 99% of other cities are safer than Oakland. 99% safer than Oakland. And it was one of the first cities to engage in defund the police. Correlation? I don't know. I mean, maybe, right? I mean, you could probably make an argument. You could just point that out and let that sit with somebody else who was like, defund the police, greatest concept ever. Till it wasn't. NeighborhoodScout.com gave Oakland a rating of 1 on a scale of 1 to 100 for safety, with 100 being the safest rating possible for a city. Oakland having the worst. If there was a negative rating, Oakland would probably get it. But there aren't. Let's be reasonable. Between 1 and 100, we need to deal with positive integers, right? Whatever that is, math term. Math, not my greatest skill, but, whatever. Data reported by the Oakland Police Department shows violent crime rates spiked in 2021. But they did in a lot of other cities too, that not only defunded, but maybe didn't defund. I think people they were pissed off and they're like, all right, if we're not going to get called out for doing this crime, why not? And I'll take a gun with me. Why wouldn't I? One of my big things is I think if you get caught with a stolen gun, give them an automatic 10 years. That would take a lot of these criminals off the street. A lot of these criminals. And no parole. No parole. No time for good behavior. 10 years. Get them off the streets. Interesting. All right. That would never work though, because, we'd look at the data on who's getting arrested and that wouldn't work. So total homicides jumped 23% to year from 109 in 2020 to 134 in 2021. The numbers mark Oakland's highest homicide rate in more than a decade. Okay. We've seen that in Portland. We've seen that in other areas as well. We've just got this crazy violent crime. Can you make a causal reference to the defunding the police? Not entirely, but defunding the police, it sure didn't help, did it? No, it didn't. And what's so interesting is that, March or May of 2020, defund the police. This is the best thing ever. Let's get rid of them. Let's abolish them entirely. And that was a real thing. Abolish the police. That is part of, some of Black Lives Matter's, some of their stuff, corporate level. So you can't deny that. It's out there and it's part of their program. And so it goes from that to, we need some more damn cops. Where's the cops? Where can we hire cops? Oh my gosh, there's no cops to hire. What happened? I don't understand why our retire program isn't working out and we're just not getting these cops back in droves. What happened? Yeah, we kind of been sitting on the sidelines looking back going, well, yeah, we called that one. These are not hard calls to make. And yet, if you're of the, more emotional end of things and you're not dealing with facts, then maybe you're like, this could have worked out. We could have funded the neighborhood, local, whatever it is, council, and, crime would have gone down. Maybe, probably not. Recent robbery of Oakland resident and Jeopardy champion Amy Schneider may be the most notable violent crime incident as of late. What is she doing in Oakland? That's the question. If you're a winner on Jeopardy, you've got some money, what are you doing in Oakland? Oakland's got some cool stuff, though. I mean, it gets a bad rap as just being, tough neighborhood. There's some cool areas of Oakland. I've spent some time there. It's like any city. It's like Portland. You go to some places in Portland and it's great. Others, it's just get me out of here. Same in Seattle. Some beautiful areas in Seattle. This summer, I mean, the 3 days of sunshine we get in the summer, they are epic. Epic. Those are the best 3 days of your life for that year, because the other 362 are cloudy and or raining. So now I exaggerate, but like any city's got, some areas that are just super cool. Oakland, it's got some too. An analysis, but it's also got some crazy crime going on, and maybe you don't want to visit those areas quite so much right now. An analysis of the Oakland Police Department shows a dramatic increase in robberies involving a firearm over the last 2 years. Everybody's grabbing their guns. We just had this ridiculous high capacity magazine law passed here in the state of Washington. It's like, you can't manufacture and you can't sell. It's still legal to possess them, but like over 10 rounds, you're not supposed to have. And they're trying to prevent mass shootings. When's the last mass shooting Washington had? How about you put a law in the books that if you do a crime with a stolen handgun, automatic 10 years. That would actually do something. That would get some of these criminals off the street. Far too reasonable, not nearly emotional enough, so it's never going to work. John, your idea is terrible. Okay, I agree. In 2021, Oakland police received 1,109 reports of robberies that involved a firearm. That number jumped 38% from 805 cases reported in 2020. So the deal is these robberies, the crime that's happening out there, it's not done by ghost guns. I mean, some of it is. It's not done by guns with high capacity magazines. It's done with guns that people are stealing and or have been stolen and sold on the secondary market. Not even the gray market, the straight up black market, right? I mean, how hard is it to recognize that? You could spend 2 hours researching, crime news stories involving robbery with a gun. I don't know what percentage of those news stories, but you would end up with, and it was reported the gun was stolen. So it's like, okay, yeah, that's how we know is doing all the crimes with. They're doing it with a stolen gun, because why wouldn't you? You're going to do a crime with a gun you just bought at the gun store and you registered and you waited your 3 days and you got your concealed weapons permit and you filled out 18,000 different forms to the government. And then you go out and commit a crime with that gun? Hell no. You're going to go steal one and then go do your thing, or buy one that's been stolen. I mean, let's be reasonable. You need to have a reasonable approach to crime if that's what you're going to do. All this other stuff. Let's get the multi-capacity magazines off the table. All right. I didn't know that was even an issue. Is that even an issue? When's the last time we had a shooting with, some kind of semi-automatic rifle? In Washington anyway. But we're worked up about it. We're afraid of it. But all those, single incidences that happen with stolen guns, don't worry about those. Those are, just don't worry. So the robbery report from Jeopardy champion Amy Schneider came just days after 2 senior citizens in their 70s were violently assaulted and robbed at gunpoint. Does this have a happy ending? I don't think it does. No, it doesn't. It's just crime is up wildly. Carjackings are up by a whole bunch. Residential robberies also increased from 2020 to 2021. All right, here's the funny one. Here's the funny comment. In November, so all this stuff started to change pretty hard by the end of 2021, right? We'd had a full year to recognize you know what? Looking back, maybe defund the police wasn't the right call. I'm not sure. I'm not going to fully commit to that, but maybe that wasn't the right call. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. I mean, these crime stats, these are not good. These aren't reasonable. What happened? I don't know. So in November 2021, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf said, now I quote, "There is nothing progressive about unbridled gun violence." No, there is not. No, you might say that it's regressive, that you are going backwards when you have crime rates spike. But I think the majority of us reasonable folks kind of knew that going into this. There is nothing progressive about unbridled gun violence. And I try and stay out of the whole conservative, progressive, because I think my content comes across as it is what it is. And I believe what I believe. And you can figure it out based on what I podcast and what I talk about. But progress and unbridled gun violence, I'm going to agree with Oakland Mayor that, yep, the two don't go hand in hand. Just like, allowing people to live in your parks and poop on the sidewalk and pee just wherever and shoot up and give them needles and, all kinds of good stuff that people in San Francisco and, Seattle are doing on the regular. That isn't really progress either. I don't see these things as a lot of progress. In fact, I see a lot of backwards progress or regressive progress in these situations. So her comment came after a retired police officer working as a security guard for a San Francisco TV station was shot and killed while in the city. 2 other people were killed in Oakland the same weekend in November. That's the kind of crime run that Seattle's going through right now. And a lot of it has to do with these open air drug markets on our public streets, on the sidewalks going on. And we've just kind of let them go because we're so inundated with so many issues right now that, it's just a free for all. It's like, okay, so unless we put a bunch of cops right on top of it, it's just going to keep going. So Schaaf, the Mayor Libby Schaaf, and Oakland's 8 city council members were among the first group of elected officials in major U.S. cities to support the defund police movement after the death of George Floyd and protests that followed. In late 2021, Schaaf and council members backtracked on many of their plans as violent crime continued to escalate. I found that amusing, terrible for the people that lost their lives that could have been avoided, horrible. But what did you expect? Did you really expect, we've defunded the police by 50%, like they were demanding at CHOP. We did that. Say we did that. Crime goes up. Did you really think that crime was going to go down? I think some people actually did. How could this not work out? This is the greatest concept ever. Till it wasn't, right? While all 8 city council members are officially listed as nonpartisan, they have been affiliated with the Democratic, they're just straight up Democratic Party, right? Oakland's council is often described as progressive, okay, and far left leaning on the political spectrum. Oakland's mayor election is a nonpartisan election, but Schaaf too is affiliated with the Democratic Party. So interesting that the city that was one of the first, the council and mayor were one of the first to embrace that whole defund the police movement, is probably the most dangerous city in California. And that says a lot because you've got some areas of LA that have got to give Oakland a run. They got to be close, right? The whole Skid Row thing, ish. Maybe that part of town, its statistics just, they fall by the wayside because those are horrible. So while Oakland's overall violent crime rate increased from 2020 to 21, certain types of crimes that drove that increase, in addition to homicides, carjacking, and robberies, we had assaults with a firearm, shooting into an occupied home, as you do, auto burglaries, and crime in general exploded. But it exploded, I think, the worst in cities that had this whole defund the police thing. It's been an ongoing concept because you've got other cities that they didn't engage it the way that like Seattle did or Portland did or Oakland did. And their crime rates haven't been the same, but there has been an overall trend. You can't deny that But it's worse in cities who just said, yeah, we don't want the police. We don't believe in them. Let's take a big poop on them. And then we'll just see how it goes. Well, number 1 out of 100, and 100 being the best, that's where Oakland has gone. So can they turn that around? Well, I don't know. All of this stuff, you're like, well, this is going to be entertaining to watch because it typically gets worse before it gets better. And, what I think a lot of the societal things that increased, had these crime rates just start to skyrocket and just go up. I think those, if we would have had normal levels of police officers, if we wouldn't have had this whole anti-police thing, I think they would have spiked and they would have come back down. But now these criminals know that they can get away with this stuff. They know they can get away with stolen guns here in Seattle because it's just like it's a free-for-all. And so judges aren't going to do anything. I mean, every now and then they do something, but start putting people away. Start handing out some severe sentences because that's what we need. And in the meantime, we're just like, oh, we're going to let him go. All right. Well, I mean, he didn't, completely kill the person. So let's let him go. That one, it was just armed robbery. That's not that big. That's not that big of a deal. Probably just a misdemeanor. We'll let that go. Oh, he robbed a bank. Next time he'll be better. I mean, you got to give people a chance. Not everybody's perfect. Yeah. So there's that. In other cities where they enforce the law, it's interesting. Yeah. Other countries where they enforce the law, steal something, cut off your hand. How much stealing do you think goes on in a country like that? Yeah. Not saying to do that. I'm just saying, is there a causal relationship between crime and punishment? I do believe there is. And I do believe we are seeing the direct results of that here in Oakland, California. So anybody in Oakland, California, if you disagree with my podcast, let me know in the comments. Just let me know. Because I don't think you can say things are going swell relative to, the spiked rates since 2020 or even since 2019. And what can we expect moving forward? I think you can expect these crime rates to be elevated for a while. And then they'll slowly come back around as we slowly get back to kind of a normal concept, which is, defunding the police. Yeah, probably wasn't our best call ever. Took us, a year and a half to figure that out. But yeah, I think we're going to stay away from that. Even like President Biden said last Tuesday, we're no longer defunding the police. Bad idea. We're refunding the police. Wild, right? I mean, that's it's just been a wild ride. And, ask people in Oakland how they're feeling about things going. Maybe they're fine with it. I'm not sure. I doubt they are because reasonable people, they're not fine with this. That's the deal. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch up with you soon. Till then, bye for now.